Testimony will be limited to 3 minutes, and I'll manage the timer to go off at the 3-minute mark. We also have some other opportunities for public comment later in the meeting, so if anybody would like to comment on either the budget or on ordinance number 24-1514, that will be a little bit later on. Right now, we're just taking testimony on non-agenda items. So for anybody joining on Zoom, you can sign up if you haven't already by hitting the raise hand button, which depending on your version of Zoom is either at the bottom of your screen or within the reactions tab. For those joining us in person, if you have not signed up in advance, you can do so by filling out one of the blue cards in the back of the room and bringing that up to me. For anybody joining us on Zoom, I'll promote you up to a full panelist, so I'll call your name. You'll see a window pop up asking you to accept that promotion. Once you do so, you'll be able to turn on your camera and unmute yourself. And as a reminder to everybody testifying today, you do not need to give your physical address. However, please do identify yourself for the record before testifying. So with that, President Peterson, councilors, we have not had anybody sign up in advance to speak today, and I don't see any hands going up. President Peterson.
All right, well, we'll wait 5 more seconds if anybody wants to come forward.
All right, and seeing no virtual or physical hands still.
All right, well, thank you. We'll close public communication on non-agenda items and move on to our first presentation. We have a presentation by our auditor, Auditor Evans, of financial policies with an emphasis on renewal and replacement. Transparency and accountability are always top priorities for this council, so I'm very interested. I think the council is very interested in hearing what the auditor has to say. Welcome, Auditor Evans, and please introduce anyone that you've brought forward since I'm not in the room. I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Good morning, Metro councilors. I'm joined today with Angela Owens. She's a principal management auditor in our office and somebody who worked on this audit. As President Peterson said, we're here to present the results of our renewal and replacement audit that was published last month. The audit had 2 objectives. The first was to determine trends in renewal and replacement revenue and expenditures over the last 10 years, and then develop scenarios to evaluate the adequacy of referent resources in the future. The second was to determine how renewal and replacement projects are prioritized and managed. Before Angela summarizes the results of the audit, I want to give a little background on renewal and replacement. It's the process that Metro uses to replace capital assets to extend their life or increase the efficiency of their original use. Metro maintains financial reserves to fund renewal and replacement projects for its buildings, vehicles, and equipment. Spending on renewal and replacement projects can vary quite a bit from year to year, depending on the type of assets and the age of those assets. As of June 30th, 2023, Metro's renewal and replacement policies applied to about $310 million, or 41% of the total value of Metro's assets. The financial policies that Metro Council adopts each year include capital asset management policies, and those policies outline guidance for renewal and replacement. At Metro, policies are implemented through partnership among 3 departments or venues. Finance and Regulatory Services helps set reserve policies. Capital Asset Management manages the process to develop the 5-year capital improvement plan. And then the department or venue that manages the asset is involved in identifying and completing projects. With that, I'll turn it over to Angela to summarize the audit's results.
Greetings. I'm Angela Owens. I work in the auditor's office and I use she, her pronouns. We found several best practices were in place for managing renewal and replacement, and the Capital Asset Management Department was in the process of implementing additional efforts to increase the maturity of Metro's asset management practices. We also found some opportunities for improvement. At the time of our review, an agency-wide asset management strategy was not finalized. This was needed to set the overall vision for aligning renewal and replacement financial policies, information systems, and identification and prioritization processes. For this reason, we recommended identifying which recommendations from the 2018 consultant report to implement, formally approving the finalized strategy, and documenting milestones and roles and responsibilities to implement it. We also found some inconsistencies in the guidance that reduced clarity about the intent of renewal and replacement reserves, and there were opportunities for different interpretations among the guidance documents we reviewed. Without clear guidance that aligns with a finalized asset management strategy, Decision makers cannot know if they're budgeting too much or not enough funding for renewal and replacement. The annually adopted capital asset management policies, or CAMP, required some reserves to be sufficient to cover 10 years of needed projects. We were informed reserves were insufficient to cover 5. At the same time, Metro successfully covered expenditures and met reserve targets outlined in its reserve policies for all renewal and replacement funds. So we wanted to take a closer look at the adequacy of renewal and replacement reserves for the future, and Brian's going to talk a little about those scenarios later. Based on the inconsistencies and the potential for interpretation, we recommended updating CAMP and renewal and replacement reserve policies to align with the agency-wide asset management strategy. We compared budgeted amounts in the capital improvement plan to actual spending at the Metro Regional Center, the Oregon Zoo, and the Oregon Convention Center, and found that year 1 of capital improvement plan inconsistently predicted renewal and replacement spending. And this meant that not all projects moved forward as expected, which could impact the cost and timeline for completing them. For instance, in fiscal year 21-22, there was about a $6 million difference between what was budgeted and what was spent. So applying inflation to that amount could increase costs by about $400,000. CAMP requires capital improvement plan project, budget, and actual reporting, as well as status reports to be provided to Metro Council twice a year. We were unable to find evidence that this reporting was taking place. In addition to the required reporting, best practices recommend an easy-to-understand agency-wide asset condition report at least every 3 years that includes comparisons of actual to expected condition and performance. For these reasons, we recommended providing reports to Metro Council and the Chief Operating Officer about agency-wide asset conditions and the status of capital improvement plan projects, including budgeted to actual spending. At the time of our review, data standards and requirements were not fully implemented. Metro has an asset database, but it's historically been used to track maintenance and work orders. The Capital Asset Management Department was in the process of implementing data standards to ensure consistency and use the data to identify renewal and replacement needs. Continued work in this area will be important to ensure selected projects address the most urgent needs. We recommended finalizing the asset data standards to set expectations for which assets are in the database, the level of detail, the rating criteria, and roles and responsibilities for maintaining the data and making sure it's complete and accurate. Information to identify renewal and replacement projects was inconsistent. The Capital Asset Management Department was in the process of piloting facility condition assessments, or FCAs, to identify renewal and replacement needs. These assessments are typically done by external contractors to assess asset conditions and provide cost and timeline estimates for maintaining and replacing them. They appear to provide a more detailed information than the previous tool that Metro used to identify renewal and replacement needs. During the audit, guidance was being finalized to standardize the type of information collected in the FCAs. This is important because they present information differently depending on who the contractor is, which could make it difficult to identify similar needs across the agency and potentially reduce costs by grouping larger projects together. Guidance for using FCAs to identify projects was not in place, but will be needed because there are some inconsistent definitions between the capital improvement plan and the FCAs. For instance, most investments identified in the Metro Regional Center's FCA were for preventative maintenance, but under CAMP, renewal and replacement funds are not intended for routine maintenance. As a result, we recommended creating requirements for facility condition assessments and assuring they're reflected in contract scopes of work, developing guidance on how to align the assessment with the capital improvement plan, and periodically evaluating the accuracy of the FCA estimates. In line with best practices, Metro's instructions for the capital improvement plan included a project prioritization template and guidelines. We found additional documentation in this process could increase transparency. For example, more specificity was needed to interpret the prioritization categories. The template was not always filled out completely. And among projects that received low scores, 59% were moved forward, and fewer than half of those included explanations, and that was within the 3 departments that we reviewed. So this indicated that the prioritization tool might not be as effective as it could be for selecting timely projects. As a result, we recommended revising the project prioritization template by refining the risk categories and scoring scales, and requiring explanation when moving low-priority projects forward or delaying high-priority projects. And now I'll pass it off to Brian to go over the scenarios.
Thanks, Angela. As Angela mentioned, without clear and well-aligned financial guidance, it's probably more difficult for decision makers to know if they're budgeting too much or not enough for renewal and replacement. And so to estimate the adequacy of funding, we evaluated 3 financial scenarios in the audit. The first scenario, which we call scenario 1, looked forward at planned projects. And to do that, we used the reserve policies to estimate future revenues, and then looked at the fiscal year 23-24 capital improvement plan to estimate the expenditures that were planned in the next 5 years. We found that reserves would only cover the next year's planned projects in 1 of the 5 funds we looked at, and would cover the next 5 years' projects in 2 of the funds. This means that Metro would need to draw down the fund balance to complete the projects that are currently in this capital improvement plan. In the other 2 scenarios, we took a backward look, so to look at actual expenditures on projects that had been in previous plans to see what the actual trend of previous spending looked like. For scenario 2, we used the 5-year average of all previous revenues and expenditures. And for scenario 3, we used the same 5-year average, but we excluded what we considered outlier projects or one-time revenue sources that may have distorted the trends. In both scenarios 2 and 3, we found that 3 funds have more annual set-asides than needed, while 2 may have to draw on their fund balances to fund future renewal and replacement projects. This analysis really points to the need to finalize the purpose of renewal and replacement reserves to know what strategies are most important moving forward. For example, if the reserve policies are expected to cover the full 5-year capital improvement plan or 10 years worth of needed projects, that'll require more annual set-asides. Alternatively, if the policies are intended to cover actual project costs based on past trends, less annual set-asides may be needed. The audit included 10 recommendations. 5 were related to finalizing Metro's asset management strategy and meeting reporting requirements, and the other 5 were focused on identifying long-term asset requirements and strengthening the quality of information used in decision-making. That concludes our presentation. I want to thank the Chief Financial Officer, CAM Director, and their teams for their assistance during the audit. I'd also like to thank Angela and our Oregon Fellow, Chamain Hoang, for their work on the audit. We'd be happy to answer any questions you have or wait until you have a chance to hear management's response.
Thank you, Auditor. I think we'll work on the management response and then come back to questions. Thank you. I'm sorry, Brian. No, who's up?
Good morning.
Councilor Rosenthal, can you wait until we get both the response? Thanks.
Good morning, President Peterson, Council. I'm Andrew Scott. I'm one of Metro's Deputy Chief Operating Officers. I use he, him pronouns. Happy to be here this morning. First, I'll just open up by thanking Council and the Auditor for the opportunity to respond to the 2024 financial policies for renewal and replacement audit. Overall and in general, we agree with the audit findings and recommendations. We believe that a sustained and strategic investments are needed to support Metro's infrastructure and facilities. And we really believe that these audit findings support the strategy and efforts that are incorporated in our current work plan, and appreciate how the audit highlights some of those efforts that are already underway. So I'll go through just some of, not so much the specific recommendations, but more in general, sort of where we are with asset management at Metro. As I mentioned, we agree with all the recommendations, and in terms of highlighting a couple of areas where we really believe progress is already being made. So for a little bit of history here, back in 2018, we created our strategic asset management plan that really charted an ambitious course of action for taking care of Metro's assets. We made some progress on that plan, but to be really frank, the pandemic budget reductions eliminated some key positions on the asset management team, in addition to reducing the capacity within our departments, as well as available funding for some of these regular capital investments. However, I'm proud to say that in the past 18 months, the Capital Asset Management Department within Capital Assets Management, or CAM, has made some really important inroads. The asset manager position has been restored and filled. A new asset management team has been reconstituted, and we've taken some significant concrete steps. For example, one of the things the audit does is reinforce the need for consistent asset data. The asset management team has reviewed best practices for asset management data standards and condition ratings, and has worked with a consultant to reestablish these critical data standards for Metro. CAM also developed an agency-wide solicitation for facility condition assessments. This will ensure that departments have ready access to these important FCAs, that the findings conform to Metro standards, and that we can do the FCAs at the best price possible. By improving data standards, creating consistency, as an agency, we're gonna have better information to make informed decisions about our assets, which respond directly to recommendations number 6 and 7 in the audit. The audit also highlights the need for an updated asset management strategy. And by the end of 2024, CAM plans to update Metro's asset management policy, work with departments to plan and conduct facility condition assessments, and update the prioritization process that informs the department capital improvement plan development. In addition to that, we have an asset management stakeholder advisory group that's going to help inform this updated asset management policy. The updated policy will codify our asset management strategy, which addresses recommendations 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, and 10 within the audit. I also want to take just a minute to talk about reserve policies generally and provide some additional thinking on the value of capital reserves. To successfully fund and maintain our assets, we will need to integrate asset management practices into our capital management planning process, as I mentioned. And this means that our CIP should be developed by identifying what are those 5 to 10 year capital needs. So when we look out at those, what are those 5 to 10 year needs, at the same time looking at what our service needs and risk tolerance is as an agency, and then developing a funding plan that meets those needs. Those funding plans are going to include lots of different options. It's going to include cash contributions, potential grants, forecasted rate or fee increases, debt financing, and of course draws on capital reserves. All of these are legitimate means for funding capital assets. And I just want to make this point that reserves are one very important piece of the funding puzzle when it comes to asset management, and there's not a number of other pieces as well that go into that funding. So in closing, investing in capital reserves and implementing an asset management strategy is more than simply repairing broken things. Our asset management efforts ensure that our facilities continue to deliver services to our community in ways that are aligned with Metro's goals and values, particularly around access, sustainability, and resiliency. And to this end, we really appreciate Council's continued support for asset management program and policies and the continued funding for those things. I also want to recognize the efforts of the entire asset management team, in addition to the facility managers and capital improvement plan coordinators within each department. It's their day-to-day efforts that translate into these policy goals, into tangible results. And finally, in closing, I want to again thank Auditor Evans. We really appreciate the collaborative approach in identifying opportunities for improvement throughout this audit. And again, we agree with these recommendations and think they're really going to set us on a positive path moving forward. And I do have some key staff here with me as well, and we're happy to take any questions about this audit or capital management generally.
Thank you, Andrew. Okay, counselors, any questions? Councilor Wong.
Great, thank you, Madam President, and thank you for this audit. I had just two maybe questions that may or may not be in the scope of this audit, but I noticed the 5 categories where there are reserves for capital improvements that none of our venues were included. And I'm wondering, do we have a policy around reserves for the venues, both for property that we own and manage, but also property that we don't own directly? And I'm thinking of, cooling tower failures and things like that. That kind of threw us for a loop. So do we have policies around that for addressing future issues that might come up, and not like impacting the budgets, of all the venues?
Councilor Wong, great question. Brian Kennedy, he, him pronouns, CFO. Our reserve policies for the venues, try to strike kind of balance between a couple key areas. One, our operating reserves, funding for future capital, and then business strategy, so opportunities to make investments in things that might be revenue generating in the future. In the past, we've had various levels of success in funding, particularly those capital reserves for the convention center and the expo center. There's a funding source, the transient lodging tax pooled capital that passes through from Multnomah County, that in the past has been our most stable source of funding for those capital reserves at the venues. Since the pandemic, that has largely dried up. So we are probably underfunded in that area, but our financial planning team has a reserve policy for each venue that tries to size our ideal target, striking a balance between those three areas, knowing that in a lot of cases, we are not going to be able to fully fund the capital needs for the venues, that we have to pursue outside funding in a lot of cases to make those more significant capital investments.
And just in the scope of the audit, was the audit focused on CAM, and is the venue like a separate? No? Okay.
I can speak to that. We originally framed this audit, you'll see the title in the council record is Financial Policies with an emphasis on renewal and replacement. And that's because we were taking our starting point from the financial policies that you all adopt at the beginning of the fiscal year each year. And so that really focuses on the policy side, which from where I sit, usually sits in the FRS world, but when we dug down deeper, saw that a lot of the work is being done in CAM as well, and so it ended up being both departments kind of included in the audit. And then to your question around scope around the venues, part of the reason you don't see scenarios, the venues included in those scenarios is because those reserve funds include both new capital and renewal and replacement capital funds, and so it was very difficult for us to make a judgment call on what would be considered new versus renewal and replacement, whereas it's very clear on the funds that we looked at. So we tried to look at the ones where we had the clearest guidance on what renewal and replacement trends look like. The venues, it's much more difficult to separate out new capital projects from just maintaining existing assets.
Thank you, that's very helpful. So we're focused on renew, replace, not. Understood, thank you.
All right, thank you. Counselor Rosenthal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A question, just tee in a little bit off what Councilor Wong asked regarding the venues. To what extent will the MERC Commission review this or have input onto this or consider it? I can imagine some of the members might be concerned about capital asset management and about in the long-term goals. And then I have one other question, if you want to just address that.
We would be happy to present the results to MERC. We haven't thought about that, so I can reach out to the chair of MERC and find out if they'd like to have some time on a future agenda for us to present the results of the audit. And then I guess maybe to touch on both of your comments, Councilor Huang and Councilor Rosenthal, we did complete an audit of the intergovernmental agreements that fund some of the MERC facilities, specifically P5, and found it pretty challenging to know who's responsible and how the funding is going to go for those assets that are owned by one, managed by another, and potentially even owned by a third party that's not either the city of Portland or Metro. So pretty complicated financing structure from what we can see.
Yes, I understand you. One of the counselors on the MERC Commission is an actuarial and does understand this and is very concerned about these issues. So I think that might work. And then I have a little more general question. I think it's great to have priorities for prioritization of capital improvement projects. How does that work between different divisions and different reserve funds that are used? In other words, because different departments have different goals, and sometimes it's very hard to balance individual goals. Parks goals are different than solid waste goals, and so it's apples and apples. And so, can you comment on how that's going to go forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, it's an interesting point. One of the things, as you all know about Metro, we have lots of diverse lines of business that are funded differently, unlike a more traditional general fund government. And so what that means is that we do have some general fund assets or some general fund resources. And from that perspective, we try and do a Metro-wide prioritization about where those should be spent. There's actually a budget note to this effect in terms of how to spend some of these dollars on capital assets. Outside of that, though, each individual department uses their reserves, to deal with the issues within their department. So you're right, they are very different. What we're trying to bring with an asset management program is consistency around that prioritization, but recognizing different lines of business, right? So we'll be working, and we are working with solid waste to figure out, how do they prioritize within their transfer stations, within their other programs. Parks is different than that, but those resources are also different. So I don't know if that's getting to your question, but there's not a crossover there in terms of priorities in one department, being bigger or smaller than priorities in another.
So it's a work in progress.
And the reason why we've reconstituted the asset management program.
Thanks.
Thank you. Counselor Lewis.
Sure, thank you. I appreciate this audit, and in particular appreciate how it highlights what we've done to centralize expertise, yet also empower managers to know their line of business and their product and their assets. And I guess my question there is, this audit doesn't really mention a place of training or collaborative skill building between those in the departments and those in CAM. And I'm wondering if there's a best practice there that either I didn't read between the lines well enough, or you discovered but didn't come into this report. Because I really want to empower all of our staff, not just CAM, in this field. Sorry.
Good morning, Council. My name is Ryan Kinsella. I use he, him pronouns. I'm the Director of Capital Asset Management. Thanks for the opportunity to speak this morning. So there's been a couple of things that we've been doing to support departments. One is that we've engaged a stakeholder advisory committee for the asset management program, and that really does represent the folks that are developing the CIPs and the facility managers for all of our departments. And, a key part of our strategy is that for us to be effective, we have to bring departments along the way. And we recognize that oftentimes the folks that are developing the CIPs are facility managers that are managing operations, handling the day-to-day, assigning work orders and all those things. So a central component is really sort of meeting them where they're at and making sure that they can continue to do their day-to-day jobs, but also bringing their input, expertise, needs into how we support the overall development of that policy.
Great, thank you. And is that something you're doing yourself internally, or do you have consultants, or is there a curriculum? How do you approach that?
It's being led by our asset management team. Zoe Berry is our asset manager, and she's been guiding the overall engagement process.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you, good work.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you, Auditor Evans. I look forward to the work that we are about to embark on to finalize what we've been working on for quite some time with your help with this audit. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to resolutions. We have one resolution today, number 24-5412, for the purpose of adding 2 new ODOT managed projects to the 2024-27 MTIP to meet federal transportation project delivery requirements. This amendment includes 2 ODOT-funded projects: a complete streets upgrade with new ADA facilities and design and construction of a new bus on shoulder lane on I-205. Normally, we've just put these into the consent agenda, but I thought that the council would be very interested in hearing on both of these, since they not only promote our climate change initiatives, but also our safety initiatives region-wide. And so we have both Chris Ford, ODOT Region 1 Policy and Development Manager, as well as Dwight Brashear, the Transit Director of the City of Wilsonville.
Hi.
Good morning. Who's going to start out? Since I'm not, oh, hi, Chris, you're online with me. Hi, go for it.
Hi, and Dwight, just raise your hand if you need to drop off early. Thanks so much for having us here today. I'm the Policy and Development Manager for ODOT Region 1, And I'm not a subject matter expert on this, so Dwight, as an operator, can provide more insights. And if we get into some detailed questions, I have a member of the ODOT staff in the audience who we could always promote up if we want to into the details. But I'll try to be quick. This is an exciting new for Oregon way of using the existing transportation system more efficiently across multiple modes. If you could advance the slide, please. So bus on shoulder. What exactly is bus on shoulder? Ultimately, it allows authorized transit users to use a roadway shoulder, in this case, freeway shoulders, to bypass congestion. We'll get into some more details in the upcoming slides on exactly what that means. And the whole idea is to improve transit reliability and make the best use of existing freeway facilities. It's already used a lot of places. I guess Washington State's had bus on shoulder since 1970. Minnesota has over 290 miles of bus on shoulder, and they've been using it in the Minneapolis-St. Paul region since 1991. This is now part of ODOT's Strategic Action Plan as one of the ways to help reduce congestion in the Portland metropolitan area. Next slide, please. Exactly how does it work? It's not just buses get on the shoulder whenever they feel like it. When the adjacent travel lane is moving slowly, buses can move on over there, and they can move up to 35 miles an hour. There is still regular use of the shoulder, pedestrians, cyclists, disabled vehicles, maintenance, and all those take precedent. And the bus is supposed to move out of the system, out of the shoulder if they need to. Also at on and off lanes to move back and forth. But the whole idea, again, is to provide buses an option when things really slow down. There are some operational procedures on the next slide that go through exactly how this works. So there's a concept of operations that gets agreed upon. It's kind of like a MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, or Letter of Understanding. And it's agreed upon between the roadway authority, usually ODOT, and the transit operator. There's one needed for each transit provider, not just for a corridor. And so each of these concept of operations is pretty unique to the corridor, but it's not just, here you go, please use it. There's basically a concept of operations, and next slide will show the roadway preparation. Ultimately, there's a lot of training to make sure, yep, you can go ahead and move it forward. And what we do on the actual roadway is make sure that there's appropriate signing and striping, and that the roadway shoulder is cleaned up so there aren't drainage or manhole issues, also rumble strips getting moved, anything to allow the transit system to move effectively. And so ultimately what this MTIP amendment is it's capital dollars in order to do these components of on I-205 in order to make these physical changes. If you go to the next slide, this didn't just come out of the blue. We tried a pilot program, worked with CTRAN. Thank you so much, CTRAN, on your work for working across I-205 and the Glenn Jackson Bridge. That was back in September 2020. Interesting time, of course. And then we worked with SMART on a segment of I-5 between Tualatin and Wilsonville. If you go to the next slide, you'll see is that there was a lot of things that we learned, fine-tuning things around concepts of operations, and those ended up being put into, I think, the ORSs in order to allow ODOT, but other roadway authorities to then have guidance on how to operate or set up a bus and shoulder system. But particularly with the I-5 pilot, SMART had a substantial increase in on-time performance. That's the whole goal. 30% increase is pretty fantastic. And we saw improvements as well with the 205 pilot with CTRAN. And next and last slide, and I'll turn it over to Dwight to add his thoughts and his experience with SMART. This is carbon reduction program funding. It came from the federal government. This was not part of the distribution given to Metro. This is part of the distribution given to ODOT. And it's to prepare this segment of I-205 for a bus on shoulder. It's a little bit limited and it's a narrow shoulder, so only certain types of facilities vehicles can use that. Electric cutaway buses, a little bit smaller. And ultimately this would start in Wilsonville. This is where the service would start, and this would run all the way to the Clackamas Town Center. But there would be options in that segment shown on there for bus and shoulder between Stafford and 10th Street. And then between 212 and 82nd Drive, I think further up, that's southbound. These would be electric cutaway buses. And And so we selected this because there was an opportunity here too with a relatively modest amount of money to meet all the requirements of needing amenable infrastructure, recurring congestion, and planned transit service. So if anyone's like, why exactly here? These look like the right things to have the right conditions for success. So that's an overview of what we're looking to do. Mr. Brashear, is there anything you'd like to add about SMART and your experience at Bus on Shoulder?
All right, yes, thank you, Chris. Appreciate the opportunity and I appreciate the partnership with ODOT. Just a little background real quickly. For those of you who don't know, SMART, which is South Metro Area Regional Transit, is a public transit agency owned and operated by the city of Wilsonville. Hopefully we all know where Wilsonville is. We're in our 35th year of operation. And one of the things that makes us unique is that we offer fare-free service. And we offer service to Salem, to Canby, to Tualatin, and then of course, in and around Wilsonville. We are one of the top 10 transit providers in the country, according to a national survey. So we're very proud of that. We really, our drivers absolutely enjoy providing this service along I-5 between Wilsonville and Tualatin. Just to give you some idea, we're making 39 trips a day through that corridor, many of them on that shoulder. We operate 6 days a week. On Saturday, we do 36 trips through there. So our total annual trips through that particular corridor is a little over 12,000 trips annually. And we're carrying right around 50,000 customers a year through that corridor. Back in November of 21, when we were approached with this project, we jumped at it. As you can see, we were operating from a previous slide about 52%, and a person can't keep a job if they're showing up on time 52% of the time. So it was embarrassing for us, and so this gave us an opportunity to improve that service. And now we're looking at I-205 and extending this between Wilsonville and Clackamas Town Center, which stops in Tualatin and also Westland, Oregon City, and then on to Clackamas Town Center. So this is a very, very simple project. The shoulder already exists, and so it doesn't take a great deal of investment. I believe the investment on the I-5 portion between Wilsonville and Tualatin was between ODOT and the city of Wilsonville was about $100,000. Their investment was in preparing the shoulder. Ours was in training our operators. It may be 3 times that, I don't know, on the I-205, but we've already purchased those vehicles. They're going to be wrapped. They'll arrive this summer, be wrapped and ready for service as soon as that shoulder is made available to us. So with all that said, I have to emphasize the importance of the partnership between the city of Wilsonville and ODOT. I have never in by the way, I'm 39 years in September. I've been doing this in much larger markets than Wilsonville. But that being said, I have never in my 39-year career ever had such a smooth partnership as we have experienced with ODOT. They did their part, we did our part, we met in the middle. It was seamless. Our customers love it. And so I want to do as much of this as we can and add as many other transit providers, TriMet, Chariots, and others that are faced with congestion like we're looking at on I-5 and the 205. We'd like to add them as partners as well. So I'm here to answer any questions that you might have about operations.
Thank you. Thank you both. I really do think we've got big, thorny, mega projects going on in the region, and those are certainly moving along, but they have their ups and downs. And I just wanted to highlight this good work that's going on because it really, truly does move us along in terms of moving more people. And Dwight, how many people did you say are actually on a daily basis, have an opportunity to not have to drive their car on I-5?
You're on a daily basis, you're probably looking at somewhere around 800 people. I think almost 50, a little over 50,000 a year are what we're carrying on that corridor right now.
Yeah, well, that is basically a lane.
Yes.
I mean, it's not quite, but it's basically a lane of highway that we do not have to build because of what you guys are doing. So between ODOT and SMART. So thank you so much. Councilors, do you have any questions? I see Councilor Rosenthal has his hand up.
Yes, thank you, Chair. First of all, I want to say thanks, Dwight. I like the work that SMART does, and I've taken a ride on the Tualatin and the bus on shoulder. My question is, well, one facetious question, but first question is the connection to Tualatin going to go through Borland, or have you considered a direct connection down to Wilsonville via 65th and Stafford Road? And then, maybe we need a transit center at Dub's Tavern. That might be an idea that we could look at.
Well, we are looking at the routing is changing slightly, but we've had a request for the service to service the medical facility there in Tualatin. And then we've also had a request from Riverside High School to service that high school there. So we're trying to be everything to everybody. So you will probably see it touch the medical facility and Riverside High School there near Stafford and Borland in that area.
The Meridian Park Hospital is served
Yes, that's
by TriMed.
yes.
That would be a good
Yes.
connection.
So that would be a transfer for folks that want to transfer to the 76, I believe.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councilors, any other questions? Again, just a celebration of the good work done. Oh, I'm sorry, Duncan. Councilor Wong.
Oh, great. Yeah, thank you, Madam President. Just a question for Chris. This seems like a real win-win, and I'm wondering, is this something that ODOT will be piloting, considering in other parts of the region?
I think every place that we can find the opportunity to do so, and it's a relatively modest amount of funding. That said, it's got to be particular types of funding, and you've all heard about us and all the transportation agencies and our current funding challenges, but it's pretty exciting. It's a really good way to use infrastructure efficiently. And it's been fantastic to work in partnership with SMART. And I think, Dwight, you've previously given some props to C-Tran for their help figuring out the details of this. We've got a lot of good transit agencies in the region, and they're really helpful. So yes, it's something that we're hoping to do more of. We need to have the right conditions. If transit agencies are interested, they can contact ODOT. And hopefully this is also something we can find in other parts of the state. Region 1's the only place this exists, but Salem, Eugene, and other locations certainly have possibilities for this. So I hope so.
So there's nothing currently planned, but good idea.
Nothing on the books, but opportunities can come up, and I think none of us know exactly if the carbon reduction program is going to continue from the federal government, but it would. If so, I mean, I think some of us are planning and hoping on that would be a great use of ongoing funds that could be used toward this, and so I think that's one of those factors.
Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you both for being here. Much appreciated. And again, just in a moment to celebrate. Dwight, did you have something last?
Yeah, I just wanted to share this with you. It's exciting. It just hot off the press. On Monday night, our city council approved the purchase of the first electric cutaway. And that'll probably be the first one in the state of Oregon, from what I understand. And you will see it out on I-205. You'll probably see it on I-5. The one on my shoulder right now, which is, pardon the pun, bus on my shoulder, is renewable natural gas. We run those, and then we run electric buses. We hope to be the first agency in the state to be totally off of diesel and gas. So yeah, we're working towards that. 2028 is our goal, folks. So
Congratulations, and thank you for moving so fast and being so effective.
well, we appreciate the support. Thank you.
Kudos to both of you. And I will ask for a motion from our council on resolution number 24-5412 for the purpose of adding 2 new ODOT managed projects to the 2024 through 27 MTIP to meet federal transportation project delivery requirements.
No, you got smart.
I move adoption of that resolution.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Counselor Rosenthal and seconded by Counselor Lewis. Any further discussion, counselors? All right, shaking heads. Connor, will you please call the roll?
Yes, thank you. Counselor Nolan,
Yes.
Counselor Gonzalez,
Aye.
Counselor Wong,
Aye.
Counselor Lewis,
Aye.
Counselor Rosenthal,
Aye.
and President Peterson.
Aye, thank you. And again, thank you to both of you for letting more people than just us know about the good work you're doing.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Have a great day. Thanks so much. We'll move on, council, to ordinances, first reading and public hearing. We have ordinance number 24-1514 for the purpose of amending Metro Code Chapter 7.05, our income tax administration, regarding income tax confidentiality provisions. We have Justin, our tax compliance manager, here to help kick off this presentation and answer any questions. Justin.
Good morning. Thank you, President Peterson and counselors. My name is Justin Lobsher, Tax Compliance Program Manager with FRS, Revenue and Analytics Division. Happy to be here to discuss one ordinance involving updates to 2 code sections related to collecting taxes to fund Metro's Supportive Housing Services Program. Next slide, please. The area of the tax code that has prompted today's proposed updates is specific to tax return confidentiality and disclosure provisions. Let me provide you with a summary of the updates. These go into more detail in the staff report. Next slide, please. Okay, in 2023, a district attorney ruled that local income tax information was subject to disclosure pursuant to Oregon's public records laws. Even though local law prohibited its disclosure, even though state law protects state income tax information from public records requests, local governments expressed concerns regarding this ruling. In response, the state legislature recently passed House Bill 4031, which exempts local income tax information from public records requests. HB 4031's passage immediately applies tax return confidentiality requirements to local government agencies that collect, administer, or manage certain local taxes. In the same manner, the requirements apply to the Department of Revenue for public records disclosure. This new bill makes it unlawful for Metro officers, employees, or agents to divulge personal taxpayer information. Next slide, please. Accordingly, Metro staff seeks to update its income tax code to better align with the bill's state statutory language. The proposed code language tightens up our existing provisions to match HB 4031 for consistency, while providing clarity regarding what kinds of information can be disclosed and who can receive that disclosure. Next slide, please. The major reason for mirroring state statutory language is to show clearly that we are administering our confidentiality and disclosure laws in the same manner as the state. Synchronizing Metro Code with state law will minimize the potential for future public records request battles, while at the same time assure the taxpayer community we're doing no more, no less than the State Department of Revenue. Our overall policy regarding confidentiality or to whom Metro may disclose this information remains the same. Metro has been working closely with City of Portland and Multnomah County to mirror all these provisions uniformly across all 3 jurisdictions. Next slide, please. And this concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you so much. Counselors, any questions for Justin? I think we're just very appreciative of the work that you've done to continue to tweak this measure as we go along and make sure that we are doing things that will be customer oriented. So thank you. Counselor Wong and then Counselor Gonzalez.
Great, thanks, Madam President, and thanks for bringing this before us. Just a quick question, has there ever been records requests made of our agency of private tax information? Like
I'm
in the
not aware of
past?
any specific return requests directly to Metro. But as the city of Portland administers the tax on our behalf, I would expect, whether it be a tax practitioner or a taxpayer directly may request a copy of their return.
Yeah, Councilor Wong, sorry to interrupt. Josh Harwood, I'm the Fiscal and Tax Policy Director here at Metro. Justin's pointed out exactly right. This was not born out of something from SHS. This was born actually out of the Clean Energy Surcharge over at the City of Portland. It just applies to SHS, and so that's why we're adapting over here. In my experience, we don't divulge individual tax records under any circumstances. And so people individually can request their own, but and this just codifies simply in law that we will adhere to the same provisions that the state has to and other local governments. So, thank you.
Great, thank you. Counselor Gonzalez.
Thanks, President Peterson. I'll make sure I put my hand down. Seems Counselor Wong and I are on the exact same wavelength because that was my question. So I'll just leave it there. Thanks.
Awesome, thank you. All right, seeing no further questions, we will now move into our public hearing for ordinance number 24-1514. Thank you, both of you. I will now open the public hearing on ordinance number 24-1514. Connor, will you please describe to the audience our procedures for the public hearing?
Yes, thank you. So if anyone wishes to testify on ordinance number 24-1514, now is the time to do so. Public testimony will be limited to 3 minutes, and I'll manage the timer to go off the 3-minute mark. If you've not already signed up to speak, you can do so now. If you're joining us on Zoom, you can sign up by hitting the raise hand button, which, depending on your version of Zoom, is either at the bottom of your screen or within the reactions tab. For those joining us in person, you can sign up by filling out one of the blue cards in the back of the room and bringing that up to me. For those joining on Zoom, I'll promote you up to a full panelist, so I'll call your name. You'll see a window pop up asking you to accept that promotion. Once you do so, you'll be able to turn on your camera and unmute yourself. And as a reminder to everybody testifying today, you do not need to give your physical address. However, please do identify yourself for the record before testifying. So with that, President Peterson, councilors, we have not had anybody sign up in advance to testify on this item. And I'll just give folks in our Zoom and physical audience another moment or two. All right, and still seeing no hands.
All right, with that, seeing no more testimony, I will close the public hearing. Our second reading and council consideration and vote are scheduled for June 13th, 2024. Thank you, everyone. On other business, councilors, we have the fiscal year 2024-25 budget. We need to vote on the budget amendments and notes. On Tuesday, we discussed those updates and changes to the departmental and councilor budget notes and amendments. Today, we will hold our final public hearing on the fiscal year 2024-25 budget, and we will also vote today on departmental budget amendments en bloc, followed by individual votes on councilor budget note amendments. The vote on the fiscal year 2024-25 proposed budget is scheduled for next Thursday, June 13th. With that, we will move into our public hearing. I will now open the public hearing on the proposed budget, including the departmental and councilor budget notes and amendments up for consideration today. Connor, will you please describe to the audience our procedures for the public hearing?
Yes, thank you. So if anyone wishes to testify on the departmental and councilor budget notes and amendments, now is the time to do so. Once again, testimony will be limited to 3 minutes. I'll manage a timer to go off at that time. If you've not already signed up to speak, you can do so now by hitting the raise hand button if you're on Zoom, or filling out one of the blue cards in the back of the room if you're joining us in person. Once again, for those joining us on Zoom, I'll promote you up to a full panelist, so I'll call your name. A window will pop up asking you to accept that promotion, and once you do that, you'll be able to turn on your camera and unmute yourself. And as a reminder, you do not need to you do not need to give your physical address, but please do identify yourself for the record before testifying. So with that, President Peterson, councilors, there was some written testimony that was distributed to you all last night and one more this morning on this subject. We also did have one person request to testify. However, I don't think I see them in the room yet. That was Jackie Kurak-Fram. Jackie, if you're in the room or in our Zoom audience, could hit the raise hand button, I'll promote you up. It does not appear that they're here, President Peterson. And that was the only person who signed up in advance to testify. Once again, I'll just give folks another second or two to raise their hand if they did not sign up in advance. All right, and seeing none.
All right, thank you. And thank you for those who submitted testimony. And seeing no more, I will close the public hearing for today. And we'll move on to consider the departmental budget amendments en bloc. There are 10 departmental amendments to consider. Amendment 625, I guess I should say amendment number 625, amendments number 625 through 633, amendment 635, and amendment 636. We have our Chief Financial Officer, Brian Kennedy, here to answer any questions and clarify anything for counselors. Counselors, are there any questions about the departmental amendments? All right, seeing no hands raised, I will call for a motion on the departmental budget amendments in the fiscal year 2024-25 budget en bloc.
I move to include the proposed departmental budget amendments en bloc in the annual budget for fiscal year 24-25.
Counselor Gonzalez, second.
Thank you. It's been moved by Counselor Lewis and seconded by Counselor Gonzalez. Counselors, any further discussion? Seeing no one raising their hands. Connor, will you please call the roll?
Yes, thank you. Counselor Wong?
Aye.
Counselor Gonzalez?
Aye.
Counselor Rosenthal?
Aye.
Counselor Lewis?
Aye.
Counselor Nolan?
Yes.
And President Peterson?
Yes, the motion passes. Thank you. All right, we are now going to move on to a vote to include the budget notes from different counselors. We will start with budget note number 1, unallocated general fund reserve for capital, climate resilience. Counselor Lewis, would you like to kick that off with any additional comments?
Sure, thank you so much. Colleagues, we've discussed this budget note started as amendment, but it has been changed to a note in order to best comply with budget law. But we will be expecting an actual amendment to come mid-year. And I'm excited by the opportunity to make investments in our capital program that really comply with not only our goals for climate, but taking care of what we have through the CIP identified projects that do good work for climate. And then the opportunity to take advantage of any direct pay federal incentives. So I hope you will join me in supporting what is both, I think, good governance and taking care of our assets, but also good climate progress.
Thank you. Would you like to make a motion?
I will move budget note number 1 into the annual budget for fiscal year 24-25.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Counselor Gonzalez, second.
Thank you. It's been moved by Counselor Lewis and seconded by Counselor Gonzalez. Any further discussion, counselors? Seeing none, Connor, will you please call the roll?
Yes, thank you. Counselor Nolan?
Yes.
Counselor Lewis?
Aye.
Counselor Rosenthal?
Aye.
Counselor Gonzalez?
Aye.
Counselor Wong?
Aye.
And President Peterson?
Aye, the motion passes. Thank you. All right, next we have 5 counselor budget amendments. We will start with Amendment 637, Social Innovation Opportunity Fund. Counselor Wong, would you like to kick this off?
Yes, thank you, Madam President. And colleagues, we heard from our Social Innovation Director, Johanna Swalde, at the last meeting. And this would provide a good, startup funding for bringing together various funders across the region to invest in something that matches our priorities and to build that kind of muscle memory and best practices for building potential future public-private partnerships. So I hope you'll join me in supporting this amendment.
Awesome. Thank you, counselors. Any questions before I ask for a motion? Counselor Rosenthal?
Yeah, I had a question. Because I support the Resiliency Hub concept very strongly, but there was an option there for it might not go to the Resiliency Hub, it might go to some other undesignated source of of expenditure that the committee, that the Social Innovation Council would, do we have any idea of what else they might want to substitute for this at this point in time?
If I may, Counselor, the intent is that the Social Innovation Council that Metro convenes will kind of prioritize their focus area. So yeah, I think we're looking at community resilience hubs and also potentially like a data mapping project. Those are kind of topics that have, broad support across, our organization as well as the funders that are there. Something that supports kind of a broader ecosystem. But again, I think this is meant to be flexible resources that, we can all pull together and to, have a bigger impact. I think we can definitely bring back updates as the Social Innovation Council continues to meet and deliberate.
I guess I just asked, does the Social Innovation Council have other priorities that they have identified that are being considered in this, in addition to the resiliency mobilization hubs?
Yeah, I think every funder has their own, mission and value statements. So I think we're looking for places of alignment. Those two items are definitely kind of at the top right now, resiliency hubs and data. So I can't make any promises on exactly where it'll go at this time, but I can promise transparency. But those are the two that are being considered.
Okay.
But, can't make any guarantees on. I think this is meant to be a collaborative, so we're not being as directive as we often are. But this is like part of that process going forward of like, how do we have these kind of conversations?
Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. Councilor Wong, would you like to make a motion to move the proposed budget amendment in the annual budget for fiscal year 2024-25?
I would. Thank you. And I move to include the proposed budget amendment number 2 in the annual budget for fiscal year 24-25.
Oh, can I just make a friendly amendment that it's amendment 637?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, just for clarification. Do I have a second?
Counselor Gonzalez, second.
Great, thank you. It's been moved by Counselor Wong and seconded by Counselor Gonzalez. Any further discussion, counselors? Seeing none. Connor, will you please call the roll?
Yes, thank you. Counselor Lewis.
Aye.
Counselor Gonzalez.
Aye.
Counselor Rosenthal.
Aye.
Counselor Wong.
Aye.
Counselor Nolan.
Yes.
And President Peterson.
Aye, the motion passes. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to budget amendment 638. And that one is entitled Performing Arts Grants. Counselor Lewis, would you like to add any comments at this point?
Sure. Thank you so much, colleagues, and thank you for the iterative process as we've discussed this in previous budget meetings. And this is a one-year grant program for performing arts. It's into 2 programs. One program will support our resident companies and presenting arts organizations who call the venues we manage home. And they will each have the opportunity for a grant not to exceed $6,250. As a reminder, our resident companies include Oregon Symphony, Portland Opera, Oregon Ballet, Oregon Children's Theater, Portland Youth Philharmonic, and our presenting organizations include Whitebird, Stumptown Stages, Portland Arts and Lectures, sometimes known as Literary Arts, Metropolitan Youth Symphony, and Broadway in Portland. The second program will provide grants to partner and local community-based organizations that are specifically geared towards venue rentals for organizations that would like to present in our facilities, but cost is oftentimes a barrier. The Department of Culture and Community will help curate these events. They're already in touch often with these organizations who call, inquire, and frankly, we also recruit them to come to us. This is language that was submitted with the help of Robin and to recognize the capacity of the Department of Culture and Community to help get these dollars out to the groups that could use them.
Thank you. Counselor Rosenthal, do you have a question?
No, I just had a comment. I had the opportunity to discuss this proposal with the director of the P5, and I think it's a worthy thing. It is something that obviously they don't have the staff to reach out to communities that they have not had initial contact with. So I believe that is correct, that the Office of Cultural and Community is going to be involved in this. So it's continuing Metro involvement. And one of the questions that probably remains is there a level of entry for these groups that have not had this public stage to get in? So is there a grant size or is there going to be a multiple grant sizes as opposed to the 6,250, which would be 10 grants to the larger groups? So those are questions to be resolved, but I think it's a good idea, and I hope it moves forward.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Gonzalez.
Yeah, thanks, President Peterson. I just want to call out the good work of Counselor Lewis in making improvements over the life of the amendment, including CBO focus and from the original, and think it reflects the broad goals of the P5. So I don't see any other hands. I would, like to move for us to approve this amendment. Don't know all the official language, but feeling purposeful with this agenda today.
So Counselor Gonzalez, you move to
approve Amendment 638.
Yes.
Into the annual budget for fiscal year 24-25.
Second.
It's been moved by Counselor Gonzalez and seconded by Counselor Rosenthal. Any further discussion, counselors?
I would like to just discuss quickly with Carrie, our attorney, what I should say here on the record. I do serve on a board, a nonprofit board, Portland Opera, and they are one of our resident companies.
And, thank you, Councilor Lewis. I understand that you would be serving in a non-remunerative capacity, right? It's a nonprofit.
Very non-remunerative.
That was my anticipation, so.
Goes the other way.
Those positions there's an exception for that in Oregon ethics law. However, I do commend you for raising that. I think it's good for just appearance of propriety that folks know our counselors' involvement. So thank you for raising it, but no issues with you voting or deliberating.
Great, thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. With that, why don't we go ahead and Connor, can you call the roll?
Yes, thank you. Counselor Wong?
Aye.
Counselor Nolan?
Yes.
Counselor Lewis?
Aye.
Counselor Gonzalez?
Aye.
Counselor Rosenthal?
Aye.
And President Peterson.
Aye, thank you. Motion passes. All right, we will move on to Amendment 639, Washington Park Train Task Force. Counselor Lewis, would you like to reiterate what the intent of this is?
Sure. Thank you so much, colleagues. I hope that we can bring forward a group of stakeholders, community members, and government types to discuss the many complex issues around Washington Park train and that old historic full loop. I would like to have council office help manage a process where those stakeholders come together to clarify the cost of what building out the infrastructure necessary to regain the whole loop would be, to explore the train as a tourist attraction for the entire park and for the operation requirements there, to explore the train related revenue generation that could be possible, and then also make recommendations regarding future feasibility and funding scenarios, which could incorporate future electrification as well as future management decisions. So I would like to underscore that the task force needs participation from City of Portland, and we also would want to engage, explore Washington Park, Oregon Zoo Foundation, Oregon Zoo staff, and obviously those in the community who have used the train and are advocating for this train.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Rosenthal?
Just a question as to whether we've had any expressions of, shall we say, enthusiasm from Portland Parks, because their involvement has to be fairly critical.
Commissioner Dan Ryan is quite enthusiastic and has put pen to paper expressing his willingness as both the commissioner and also his office to participate.
Excellent.
Thank you. Counselor Wong?
Yes, thank you. I'm just wondering if we feel that $20,000 for a study is sufficient, and also might other stakeholders also contribute financially to such a study?
I think this is less about a study. There have been studies. This is about $20,000 for the facilitator to help give us a venue to put all of the studies, the numbers, and reports that have been done over the years in one place. If we do need further study, it probably is a future budget ask.
Okay.
This is $20,000 for a professional facilitator to bring the meetings together and organize our thoughts.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. I will just add as a definitely vocal support of not only the extension at some point, but also getting clarification about what it all looks like, because there's a range of minimum and maximums that have been discussed, and there's already a different plan in place for that right of way under the city. So I just want to highlight the intent. I think I'm hearing from this council and from myself and Councilor Lewis that the city is the biggest partner in all of this and probably should be co-chairing the committee. And Councilor, if you're in disagreement with that, I don't think you are, but I think that that City of Portland should be a co-chair on this committee with probably a counselor from Metro.
I would be in agreement. I don't know if it's Commissioner Ryan himself or if it's somebody very senior in Parks, but absolutely need the city to help be in the lead.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I think that would move us along faster in the long run. So thank you. All right, councilors, is there a motion on budget amendment 639 for the fiscal year 2024 budget?
I would move to include Amendment 639 in the annual budget for fiscal year 24-25.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Counselor Gonzalez, second.
It's been moved by Councilor Lewis and seconded by Councilor Gonzalez. Any further discussion, councilors? Seeing none, Connor, will you please call the roll?
Yes, thank you. Counselor Wong?
Aye.
Counselor Lewis?
Aye.
Counselor Rosenthal?
Aye.
Counselor Nolan?
Yes.
Counselor Gonzalez?
Aye.
And President Peterson?
Aye. Thank you very much. The motion passes. All right, we are going to move on to budget amendment 640 in the fiscal year 2024 budget cycle, which is Portland State University Transportation Traffic Class. Councilor Simpson sponsored this budget amendment. He is not here today. We would have to look to staff if they can talk to this if there's any questions, but we have talked about it before. Do I have a motion for amendment 640?
I move to include the proposed budget amendment number 640 in the annual budget for fiscal year 24-25.
Second.
Thank you. I'm sorry, who made the second?
Lewis.
Thank you. It was moved by Councilor Wong and seconded by Councilor Lewis. Councilors, any discussion on this item? I guess I would just like to say, as somebody who's been a presenter at this traffic class in the past, it's been longstanding. Representative Blumenauer started it, and I am very pleased that Councilor Simpson has moved to include us in the future of that class and make sure that it continues, because building good civic infrastructure starts with conversations, education, and projects. So, and learning through experience. So I'm very happy for this. We've had a motion and a second and no further, Councilor Rosenthal.
Yeah, I just want to comment. I think it's also a good idea. I think it's interesting that it may be something that we may stay involved in a more dramatic way and broaden the perspective of the course to include some of the regional concerns that we deal with. And I wholly support that kind of concept.
Agreed. Councilor Gonzalez.
Yeah, thanks, President Peterson. I think Councilor Simpson, in true fashion and commitment to his personal mission and values, he's at the Oregon Active Transportation Summit on a plenary right now talking about transportation traffic funding. So I know that he wanted to be here, and he's doing good work, although he's not here to carry it right over the finish line. And I know that if he was here, he would also talk about how, since Metro has proposed this amendment, since he has proposed this amendment to our budget, that he's been able to get secured funding from other public partners to grow the impact of the class and the number of students that it's going to be able to serve from the past. So I think that kind of merits a little bit of a recognition and highlighting that hard work on his part.
Thank you. All right, Connor, will you please call the roll?
Yes, thank you. Counselor Nolan,
Yes.
Counselor Rosenthal,
Yes.
Counselor Wong,
Aye.
Counselor Gonzalez,
Aye.
Counselor Lewis,
Aye.
and President Peterson.
Aye, the motion passes. Thank you. All right, moving on to Budget Amendment 642 in the fiscal year 2024-25 budget. This is the WPES reuse pilot and one-time funding support. Councilor Lewis and Gonzalez proposed this, and I will kick it off to either one of them to reiterate where we're at with that and answer any questions.
Yeah, great. Thanks, President Peterson. As you know, there is this amendment that we've been working on. Councilor Lewis and I have enjoyed the opportunity to speak with many of you since the last work session that we were able to bring this and have a dialogue. I do know that we have some amendments and improvements to the language that Councilor Lewis will hand out now as a result of conversations, including clarity on the grants process. So let me just thank you so much, Councilor. Yeah, so since Councilor handed it off, I would love for Councilor Lewis to read them so we can share the hard work here.
Sure, absolutely. And we've obviously been talking to all of you. We also appreciate support from Director McGuire. So it's a set of amendments with the hope of giving a little bit more clarity, but the same concept we've been talking about the whole time. So the first is to add the word economic relief. So it reads, in addition, council directs WPES to allocate $750,000 in one-time economic relief funding instead of one-time funding. We know it's one-time funding, that's the kind of government money it is, but very specific economic relief. And then at the end, we're adding eligible organizations include local nonprofit organizations that are experiencing financial hardship or operational deficits who provide service to reduce waste by collecting and redistributing building supplies, furniture, and large household items to those in need and in equity focus areas in the metro region. This may include funding for existing staff and overhead, transportation and storage, and disposal costs. So that is additional context as we've heard that the budget note wasn't as clear as day as we would want it to be.
Yeah, and I guess just to kind of wrap up, I hope that from the conversations that we've been able to have in the build-up to today, that many of you see the improvements reflected that provide the clarity as to this level of one-time investment for these important partners in our environmental goals and waste prevention.
Question. All right, questions from the council. Councilor Nolan and then Councilor Wong.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Just to make sure I understand the addition that you're proposing to add to this, is this a must be or could be the organizations you've described here?
In terms
it
of
reads as include, and in conversations, I think I understand what you're trying to do here. But I'm interested in knowing if an organization that applies for these funds has to tick every box in that list, or is this just some of the things that could be characteristic of the organization?
I believe it is the latter. This is not an exclusive list.
Okay.
And what we are looking to do is make sure that organizations that are having to cut service, whether it's reduce some of their geographic footprint, whether it's they're losing staff so they can't serve as many customers, if they're reducing the window of time that they're opening. We want all of those to be eligible uses so that they're able to operate and fully serve the community.
Yeah, and Councilor Nolan, if I could add to this language, we worked closely with WPEZ, Director Marta McGuire, and also my understanding is we've worked closely with OMA as well to understand the parameters that we wanted to lay out. So if needed, I'm sure they can come and provide more clarity.
Thank you, I appreciate that. A follow-up, if I might, Madam Chair?
Of course.
Thanks. You mentioned, Councilor Lewis, some of the impacts that organizations might be feeling financially. Is there either an expectation or an allowance that in making grants, Metro WPEZ could consider the measurable impact of that on reuse within the region? In other words, if there are applications for more than the amount in the program, do we expect that WPEZ will say, oh, well, this group is asking for $100,000 and they say that they will be able to divert, I don't know, I'm pulling a number out of the sky, but divert 25,000 tons from a landfill, and this one wants $100,000 and they will divert 15,000 for the same money. Is that expected to be a consideration, or can it at least be a consideration?
Yes, the base amendment included language that there's a preference given for organizations that are trying to better track their tonnage. Because some of these organizations track in customer served and in many ways that are customer oriented. And as we are looking eventually to have a way that we stably fund reuse, we need to start looking at it in our language, which is tonnage. So anybody who's coming forward either with specific tonnage goals or with ways that they're gonna work on how they do their tracking to better be able to, at the end of the year, say, here's our tonnage, they're gonna be prioritized.
Fabulous, thanks.
Yeah.
Awesome. Councilor Wong.
Great, thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Councilors Gonzalez and Lewis, for bringing this forward. Just a few clarifying questions. In the new language, it says eligible organizations include local nonprofit organization. Do you mean that would be exclusive to, or is it including but not limited to? I guess I'm wondering, is the intent to have businesses be able to apply, like for-profit businesses? Just because I think this language kind of makes it seem like if it includes nonprofits but not limited to, so.
Yeah, we're definitely focused on community-based and nonprofit organizations. I will ask if Carrie would like to expand upon what we put down on paper, though.
Yes, thank you, Councilor Lewis. I think it's a good question in line of inquiry. Here, I think particularly when we're setting a program at the council level, I'm going to recommend something broader generally. I think knowing the intent and the purpose is very helpful for staff in fleshing out a program and for the public to know what the council's considerations are. But here I would say, let's lean into the include and not have this list be exhaustive, and so open it up for the opportunity for other businesses to apply should they come forward of any type that they are. I don't think you need to amend the language to do so. I think this discussion on the record and that and my advice is sufficient because there's nothing exclusive, as Councilor Lewis has said, with the language that has been proposed.
And then in the scoring criteria, I guess who then determines how we rank applications? Is that up to staff then?
WPEZ will be doing the work, and they've committed to a quick and light application so that the dollars can be out the door by the end of the calendar year.
Okay, great.
Yeah, and then through the building of the amendment, we discussed the different kind of levers that, government can use, procurement or allocation tools. And we ultimately decided that the grant model would be the best. And I know Marta and her team is ready to deploy the dollars within all our legal requirements, but also intending to make it the adequate level of, low barrier where necessary, and then developing that criteria for awarding in a way that embodies the spirit of what's on paper, but also the conversations that we've been able to have with the leadership team there.
Yes, and also including all our equity goals and metrics, right?
Yeah, I think the umbrella of the regional waste plan and the things that we're operationalizing, those are implied. And it has come up with other conversations, but I'm glad you're asking so that we can affirm that, yes.
Great, thank you. Just one last clarifying question. I see in the budget summary document that was provided to us, each other budget, proposed budget amendment had kind of an ending of like, we would take $20,000 from a general fund ending balance. But I see for this amendment, no specific like funding pot is listed, and I'm wondering, if we have an idea of where these resources are being drawn from. I am supportive of the ask, but I just would like to know.
We do have it. I think if Marta and or Brian could come up and explain. This was another item that we worked on in the background. Councilor Bowe's not sure if anything you want to share, but Marta's coming to give that clarity.
Yeah, Marta actually rewrote what we wrote, so let's let her explain it.
Good morning, counselors. Thank you so much. So I could touch on a couple of things that have come up. With regards to the funding, we are planning to pull this out of our contingency reserve. So looking at our end of year balance, pulling out this amount of money will not impact our 45-day operating reserves. So it will come from the reserve funds. We have noted that this will be one-time funding, as noted in the budget amendment, and any future funding would have to come from being added to the regional system fee. With regards to the earlier questions around grant application or applications for this funding and that process, fortunately, WPES has gained a lot of experience over the last year, both in distributing the disaster reserve grant funds as well as the state cleanup funds. When wanting to distribute funds in a quick process, we have established some great practices and processes to be able to do that, and I'm happy to share more information. We will need a little bit of time if this budget amendment passed to further define the application process and the criteria, but it certainly will follow much of the guidelines that we continually follow with regards to applying equity to the work that we do.
Thank you. And what is our reserve right now in WPES?
What is the total amount within it? I will look to our finance manager.
Patrick Dennis, WPES Finance Manager. I don't have that off the top of my head right in front of me, Councilor Wong, but the reserve target for the 45-day operating reserve is around $16 to $17 million. And we are expecting to have more regional system fee savings from this year than we expected when we were building the budget in the winter, springtime.
Just wanted to make sure in the sense of scale wasn't like half our reserve or something.
No, I think it was like less than small percentage.
Yeah, it's a relatively small percentage compared to our 45-day operating reserve.
Very good, thank you.
Councilor Rosenthal?
Sorry, go ahead.
Councilor Rosenthal? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I want to say that I fully support the idea that we should be having a pilot study to determine what our future is, and that we should be supporting the reuse and recycling organizations that may be facing some economic hardship. I also have full faith in WPES if this passes, to allocate quickly and efficiently and equitably the monies that might be so allocated. That said, however, my understanding, and having been involved with the I&I process for a number of years, is that was innovation and investment. It was meant as a seed fund. We have never had the discussion, nor have we taken a position that our goal is to be partners with reuse recycling on a continuing basis and to provide for their basically operation. In other words, they are in some sense businesses. So I think we're getting the cart before the horse when it comes to that by saying that we should do that. Now, if we had restricted this, and the amendment, although it does some positive things, I would have had an amendment that said it is important, two things. One is that they show that they have received grants from the I&I and they have a process that we have helped them establish, and that they have financial need, not just to include them, because this includes a lot of groups that may not have financial need. We're essentially establishing a policy that says, we're a candy store, come and ask us for money, we'll give you money, if it looks like it's going to be reused. And that's great, but that is not a discussion or a policy that we have committed to in the past. I just think that this is, there's a lot of money involved here. This is $750,000 of basically public money, and I think that we don't have enough sideboards on this as to what groups are going to be applied, how widely it's going to be applied, if there's going to be a grant limit. I think there's a lot of things. I'm afraid that I will not be able to support this in its current form, although I support the concept.
Councilor Rosenthal, the budget is an amendment to get us to the point where we can have that larger philosophical conversation. And as you note, this is a big conversation we've been having for a long time and we haven't landed anywhere. But the budget amendment directs WPES staff to come to us by November of this calendar year with a full presentation on funding recommendations for how we establish a long-term, enduring, sustainable way that we work with the reuse community. We just flew people in from around the world. We all nodded our heads. We want to do this. And this is the opportunity for us to buy enough time with some organizations doing great work so that they are still fully capacitated and with us by November, by next budget. Because otherwise, I'm looking at an ecosystem that, because of how their unique funding ecosystem works, they're in a state of contraction right when we're about to ask them to grow and go with us down a path. So that's most important. Yes, the long-term, enduring, stable funding, but that's going to come in November as part of this.
Thank you. Councilor Nolan.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Can we go back to the reserve estimate, understanding that you don't have the number in front of you, although maybe by now you do, since you've been searching for it. Were you referring to the operating fund reserve or just the regional system fee?
The total operating reserve fund, but there's going to be increased savings from regional system fees based on the department's underspend from this year.
Yeah. I want someone to tell me that we are keeping these reserve funds separate.
Yes. To your question, I think what you're asking is the 45-day reserve is sized on the operations of the entire solid waste budget, but we componentize that reserve into the transfer station operations and the regional system fee. So this would come exclusively from the regional system fee fund portion, but the point Patrick was making is it does not take us below that 45-day operating reserve that we measure in total across the entire solid waste fund.
So we count the regional system fee reserve in determining whether we're meeting our 45-day reserve for the operations?
The 45-day reserve is for all of our solid waste activities, not just transfer station operations. It's we have an operating reserve to protect against unexpected events on our regional system fee activities too. We need a reserve for household hazardous waste and Metro Paint. So that reserve is sized across the entire budget, but we separate out the individual reserve components for our transfer station operations and the regional system fee.
Thanks for the clarification, but I think for another time, we should discuss whether we're in keeping with the commitment to separate them, to have one bundled reserve standard. But that's not pertinent. We don't need to discuss that with respect to this budget amendment. I think the budget amendment makes sense.
Manisa, did you want to weigh in?
Just to confirm and restate that the level, the amount is set based on all operations But it is divided. I just want to be really clear about that because it has been such a contentious issue. The reserve is split, but it's the sum includes the total amount for all of our operations, which, like all of our other operations across Metro.
Bundling them for purposes of the contingency suggests that they're not really as separated as they need to be.
I guess, Councilor Nolan, I would just, I would challenge that language. They are not bundled. The target, the amount of money we need to protect our operations against a 45-day disruption, that number is based on our total budget. We componentize those reserves based on the individual activities. But in terms of our risk management activity, we're looking at our total operations and ensuring that we have resources to cover 45 days of operations, both for our transfer station operations and our regional system fee-funded activities.
So it sounds like Councilor Nolan, you need to follow up.
Right, well.
All right, thank you so much. Councilor Rosenthal, would you like to close out your comments?
Well, I would like to ask a question of Councilor Lewis, if that's possible. The question is, under what conditions, since this says include, eligible organizations shall include those that have financial hardship or operation, under what conditions and what guidelines would we give money to those who are not experiencing financial hardship at this point in time? And why would we be doing that?
If an organization is not experiencing financial hardship but wants to try and better track their tonnage and doesn't have the capacity to do that special project, it would be worth funding them in my mind.
That sounds like a shortcut for the I&I process.
With a very clear
But
target.
that is not specified in here.
So Councilor, I think you've made it clear that you're not supporting this budget
Yes,
amendment.
to make
And I think that if we could keep our decorum and not make it personal, that would be amazing and very appreciative, because I think the counselors have been working very hard to get clear language based on past comments. So I think what I've heard is that we will be bringing this back for council review in November for a proposal. And that will hopefully clear up a lot of the questions, and we can certainly work along the way. Councilor Gonzalez.
Thanks, President Peterson. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I thank Councilor Lewis for fielding all the questions since we worked on this together, and continuing to echo the hard work of the intent behind this amendment has been to provide, again, one-time economic relief funds for organizations experiencing financial hardship in an area of work that is so closely aligned to our goals at WPEZ, that is a part of a much broader conversation, not only at Metro, but at a state level with the Recycling Modernization Act, that we're hearing from partners that they need our support. And the jurisdiction of the council is not to create direct awards to organizations or to create specific levels of detail to the point where we are essentially deciding maybe to that extent. And what this budget amendment is doing is creating that fund for WPEZ to go work on a grant program and then develop all the items that we are talking about. We are essentially, procedurally, that is what we are doing, not defining the grant program and not awarding the grants as a council right now. I really want to clarify that there. And, with the points on the investment and innovation grant, being one of the Metro councilors that was here when we created that, these programs are fairly different in terms of the investments, and really, if we look at the grants that we've awarded through I&I, the legacy of that is just very different to what this reuse support system infrastructure that we're going to be building. I see them as parallel, but not the same, and that's a really important distinction. in terms of the programmatic definition. So I just want to make sure I offer my last thoughts there. And, President Peterson, I appreciate your calling for decorum. And definitely our effort was to, in build up to conversations with some of the items that we've heard, is to include as much clarity as we felt was necessary. And that is what is reflected in the underlined page that the counselors are reading today. So if I see other hands up, I was going to make a motion, but I will give it back to you, President Peterson.
Thank you. Counselor Wong, and then Counselor Lewis.
Great. Thank you again, Madam President. Let me be clear, I support the outcomes and intent, but I just have a question around the funding source and why is this coming from reserves and not from the kind of unallocated I&I dollars that we currently have? I don't know if there's some restriction, but I just want to make sure we're using the right pot of funds to support this.
Councilor Wong, that's a good question. Mechanically, so from a budget perspective, right now, we have revenues projected in the budget, we have expenses projected. All of the revenues, other than our fund balances, are fully committed. So the fund balance that's not committed sits in contingency. So from a mechanical perspective, in budget law, we need to move that money from contingency into this new expenditure category. So where that reserve dollar is coming from, we're not tracking if it is an I&I unallocated reserve dollar or from unspent, RID patrol, for example. So this is a budget law mechanism. We're making this change in the process. The resource we have to program to this activity is contingency, and that is coming from unexpended regional system fee dollars collected in the current fiscal year.
And I would just add, with regards to the Innovation and Investment Grant Program, as you know, that program is currently under assessment. So we did not include new funding for I&I in this upcoming fiscal year's budget. There is some money in there for grants that have been awarded that is distributed over time. So I wanted to make that clear.
No, I just wanted to, from when we first created the I&I grant as well, that funding came from reserves, is my
Reserves, and then it
understanding,
was
when we
moved on to
first
the
seeded
fee.
that, right? So
Correct.
that's an important distinction.
Correct.
Yeah, just so I understand, but so under budget law, if it's unapportioned, it actually just goes to contingency, and that's why we can't call it I&I, but it's coming from an unallocated source.
Under Oregon local budget law, your revenues and expenses have to balance. And in this case, the revenue, the resource we have is our fund balance. And so the the budgetary transaction that has to happen at this stage in the budget process is reducing contingency, which is that kind of general fund balance bucket, and increasing an expense.
Understood. Thank you for clarification.
And just to add some additional context, as you may recall in the budget presentation that Waste Prevention and Environmental Services gave, one of our top priorities is expanding opportunities for reuse, including partnerships and additional funding approaches. When we look at the regional waste plan, there's a whole section that is dedicated to looking at reuse. It's what we know has the greatest one of the greatest greenhouse gas emission savings, and where we have gaps in the system that are filled by our nonprofit partners, private and nonprofit partners. So I do feel like this is very much in line with existing policy guidance, as well as council's conversations around priorities for the system facilities plan and where we may want to make future investments in that area. We have projects currently underway that are looking at both increasing reuse opportunities within our own operations, and we have staff already working on a proposal to look at what ongoing funding would look like for organizations in the region that are doing reuse. And the stakeholder engagements that we did over the last year, the number one thing that we heard was the need for ongoing funding and not to have to do something new every time that they applied for a grant, which was the case with the I&I program. We're working to time both the I&I grant assessment with the proposal of the reuse program funding. So council may have a decision, so you'll be looking at the outcomes of both of those assessments at the same time. There could be an opportunity where council decides that that funding then goes to this reuse proposal that we're bringing to you, or you may have an alternative path that you might want to do and just make increased investment in reuse. So we are trying to work in that guidance that we've gotten from council around reuse, as well as your goals around climate. So I just wanted to add that for additional context.
Thank you. I think that very much helps and much appreciated. Council, I would take a motion on budget amendment 642.
I move to include budget amendment 642 in the annual budget for fiscal 24-25.
Councilor Gonzalez, second.
Thank you. It's been moved by Councilor Lewis and seconded by Councilor Gonzalez. Any further discussion? All right, Connor, will you please call the roll?
Yes, thank you. Counselor Wong.
Aye.
Counselor Nolan.
Yes.
Counselor Rosenthal.
No.
Counselor Gonzalez.
Aye.
Counselor Lewis.
Aye.
And President Peterson.
Aye, and the motion passes. Thank you. Counselors, I very much appreciate the robust discussion we just had. I think they're all good questions that came up, and I appreciate taking the tone down because it's not a personal issue. It's a policy conversation. And I just want to say that what the council, I believe, is looking for and striving for as we move forward in the next year is finding another way, maybe a more linear way that gives us more time to consider things like this, that maybe accelerate things that staff also would like to accelerate, counselors would like to accelerate, and finding a way to do that that starts like tomorrow and starts to really look at what our priorities have been and where they need changes, and provide guidance to staff to come back with us with an iterative approach to this so that we aren't left to budget notes. I know I'm never going to be able to get rid of budget notes and amendments, but it would be my goal that we work these things out during the year before we even get to the budget, so that we continually have a way to bring up new concepts and ideas without waiting for a budget, and work in teamwork with our staff to get us to where we need to go. So much appreciated on the use of this what tools we have today, and I look forward to working with you on new tools for the future. And that was the biggest speech you're going to get from me today, seeing as I have COVID and can barely talk. So thank you, everybody. We will now consider our adoption of the fiscal year 2024-25 budget next Thursday, June 13th, big day. We'll move on to Chief Operating Officer Communication. Thank you so much.
Thank you, President Peterson. I hope you feel better. Just wanted to pass along some exciting news from our friends at the zoo. If you are over 21 and looking for a great way to enjoy the sunny weather that we're getting this weekend, this Friday, June 7th and Saturday, June 8th, the Oregon Zoo will be hosting Zoo Brew. This event features more than 50 of the best breweries and cideries from around the Pacific Northwest, and there will be live music from the Toulouse Cajun Zydeco Band, as well as keeper chats, lawn games, and more. It should be an amazing event and a great kickoff to the summer season. And for those who attended Brew Lights, we guarantee the weather for this Brew Fest will be better.
Don't guarantee anything.
Okay, knock on wood on all those things. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselors, any communications for today? Counselor Gonzalez and then Lewis.
Thanks, President Peterson. Yeah, last Tuesday, Councilor Lewis and I were able to make it to the first roadshow stop here in the downtown Portland area for the Joint Committee on Transportation, which is our joint legislative body working on hearing from the community across the state and in the efforts of building a 2025 transportation package. I think many of you are now receiving a great level of updates from our government affairs team as well as to developments on that. So any time that you have questions or want to have continued dialogue for for how Metro is showing up on that. You can always talk with me, Councilor Lewis, Councilor Sifton as JPAC counselors, because we just through the nature of that, staff closely, and then President Peterson as well through their leadership. And we missed you, President Peterson, but thank you for also not spreading the virus. So on Tuesday, we had it was basically a two-pronged function that we were able to participate. It was a round table with about 40 leaders across, labor, safety advocates, the truckers, legislative leaders, municipal leaders, you name it. It was a pretty broad array, and we had about 2 hours to discuss a whole range of items, including revenue reform overhaul, as well as the kind of investment priorities that we have. And co-chairs McLean and Gorsuch, I think, wanted to foster a dialogue that it's hard to have a conversation with that many people, but I think hit a lot of the goals. And then Councilor Lewis and I were also able to offer public testimony during the testimony period, which was after the round table, really driving home the message from Metro and JPAC around the kinds of investments that we want to see consistent with our RTP mission and language that you've seen in a lot of different areas. So just wanted to put a bow on that. And then I know a few of us from the Metro team spent some time at the Oregon Active Transportation Summit. Was able to provide some opening remarks today, introducing co-chair Susan McLean, Representative Susan McLean, and then also Minnesota State Rep Larry Kraft, who's in town. And they were able to do some pretty remarkable stuff in 2023 out in Minnesota around VMT, GHG, different revenue mechanisms. And I think it was a great, inspiring moment for a lot of leaders in the room to think big about how we just kind of light a spark for this session. On transportation, I think I'll leave it there. It's been really consuming my mind these last 3 days, so I'll give it back to you, President Peterson.
Thank you. Thanks so much. And on to Councilor Lewis, and I'll just thank you for going in my stead to the roundtable.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much. Wanted to first begin by thanking all of our Metro senior staff who came down to Gladstone, and special shout out to everybody who shared, and Councilor Wong for being there as well in the first Metro Mixer of the year. Gladstone is a remarkable community. We were able to visit in their community center, but they have done a really nice job with some of their city facilities, and they were really gracious hosts. So just wanted to cheers to everybody who made that event happen, and the local folks who came out to interact and understand more deeply what we're investing in at Metro. I also wanted to commend the work of the Sunrise Corridor Steering Committee, which held its third meeting last night. This is a steering committee that is not a Metro-led steering committee, but it is a Clackamas County-led steering committee with many of our partners at the table, myself included. We've now agreed on and line edited word by word our vision, and next up is moving from the vision to different scenarios, which will be weighted and scored against that vision. And we expect that work to happen starting in September, our next steering committee meeting. And meanwhile, there is so much good community engagement being done. It's work that we do at community engagement really well at Metro, but Clackamas County is doing it, so it's fun to watch.
Great. Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Rosenthal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a report, the MERC met yesterday, and in general, the news was very good for all the venues. Their revenues are exceeding their expenses, and they are above projections that they had made earlier in the year when we were being much more conservative. That doesn't mean there aren't challenges. Of course, the lodging tax issue still remains to be a problem in downtown Portland, but things are looking very good. They're getting people coming down. They've had a lot of shows and a lot of attendance. As you know, the ballet exceeded its all-time attendance records recently. And so there are some good signs there. And so it was a very positive meeting. Oh, also, they made the presentation, and basically, as everybody is concerned about the Keller, there are really three options still on the board. One is a replacement at Lloyd Center, one is a replacement in the Portland State blocks, and the third one is the renovation. Let's just say the P5, if people are not happy about the even concept of the renovation because of the time that it would be out, be about 2 years before we could get new shows in. That's it.
Thank you. And for clarification, I believe that they would like a remodel of the Keller, but it needs to take into account a no closure, right, for 2 years. So I think just being very specific about it. With that, Counselor, seeing no further discussion, the council meeting is adjourned, and our next regular meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, June 11th, 2024 at 10:30 a.m. My goal is to be COVID negative by then, and I will see you then.
Thank you. Feel better.
Recording stop.